Hey, I'm Lisa Cole, and you're listening to the Head Smack podcast.
You are listening to conversations with misfits, mavericks, and trailblazers.
Hey, welcome to the Head Smack podcast. My name is Paul Pavoni, and I am excited to have another misfit with me. I have Lisa Cole, and she is a 4-time CMO and Chief Product, Marketing, and AI Officer at 2X. She's the author of Limitless CMO, a book about redesigning the marketing operating model for the age of AI. Lisa, how are you doing today?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing good. I'm looking forward to this conversation, looking forward to learning about marketing and how AI has been affecting it and things have changed. But before we go there, I want to learn a little bit about you. And so I like to start with hearing people's origin stories, kind of where you got your start. You can go as far back as you want. That'll make it relevant to our conversation. And so tell me the origin story of Lisa Cole.
I will date myself a little bit here. I was selling cell phones in, I guess you could say, my senior year of high school and into college. I was an accounting major at Rhode Island College, and I was doing such an amazing job selling cell phones. I was making more money than what I likely would have made, exiting college. The company, offered me a job to take a full-time account executive, role, selling cell phones, but selling it to mid-market and enterprise companies, and
Wow.
totally different than selling it in a retail environment. They're not even comparable. And very quickly found out I was in over my head, had no idea, who to target, how to reach out to them, how to even think about navigating, any sort of prolonged purchase decision where multiple people needed to be engaged. So I asked my sales manager for help. How do I think about targeting? How do I find the right person? I asked my peers on the sales team. I got so many different answers, just a complete lack of clarity. I was even at one point in time told to look for leads in a Yellow Pages, which is not at all helpful in any way. Then
Not many people remember the Yellow Pages. That's
I know.
for some of the people. They're like, "What's a Yellow Pages?" Just Google it.
A long list of 1-800 numbers for customer help. That's the best way to put it. So I was told, hey, go talk to marketing. Maybe marketing can help you with a lead list. Maybe marketing can help you with who to target and the stories to tell. And they were focused. They just wanted to hand me brochures. It was not useful in any way, shape, or form. It was definitely not going to help me retire my quota. But what I found through that whole exercise was just how much marketing and sales hated each other and how they blamed each other for all their problems.
Oh, wow.
And despite all of this, the company was still growing at a rapid pace. It was still, again, the product itself was pulling it forward. And I was just so fascinated how a company could grow with such a disconnect between, two major parts of their go-to-market engine. And that actually served as a catalyst for me to change my major to marketing, because I believed in that equation, marketing should have been a better support for my sales product. It should have been making it easier for the company to figure out who to sell to, how to position, how to win, these things. Well, that actually spawned the first half of my career. About 15 years, I was serving as a CMO advisor, specifically helping with sales and marketing misalignment, in the spirit of helping marketing go on the hook for a number. Historically, marketing, if you look at how a company grows, they tend to treat marketing like the doers of things, order taking function, make this look pretty, make this on the brand, give us the more branded brochures. They're not necessarily, at least back then, they weren't tasked with actually driving pipeline, and they weren't held accountable to a number. And so when you, as a marketing leader, know that you're going to go on the hook for a number, you suddenly realize you likely need different people, different skill sets, capacity. You need different technology, the processes underneath, the data that you'd need, the story that you're telling, how you manage stakeholder. It's entirely different. So I spent about 15, 16 years helping those CMOs lead that very disruptive but transformative change. But along the way, as most advisors and consultants figure out, usually your advice is picked apart. And so the leaders will pick, I like this part, but I don't like this part. This one feels too hard. And I thought, geez, can you imagine the impact this work could have if they just ran the whole playbook? And so that inspired me to move to the brand side. And I thought,
Okay.
this has got to be easier doing it for myself and going on the hook for the outcome. And I've since now led, using that similar playbook, 3 times, 3 different transformations, helping marketing organizations, very overworked, underappreciated functions, turn into these market making growth drivers for their company. 2 of which have earned recognition by Serious Decisions and Forrester for having a meaningful impact on the company's revenue growth.
Yeah.
So that's the entire career. Now, I guess you could pull out some common threads there, but the reason I wrote The Limitless CMO is a lot of that transformative work you need to do is very supportive of accelerating your company's adoption of AI. It actually provides
Yeah.
a nice foundation to work from. So there you go.
So, something that you mentioned there is the confusion between branding, the place of branding, the place of
Right.
marketing, the place of sales. So
Mhm.
talk on that a little bit, because there still seems to be that confusion in the marketplace. They expect branding people to be good marketers to be good branding people. Sales is somewhere in there. Some people say start with sales. Some people talk a little bit about that based on your experience in seeing this confusion or conflict or whatever it might have been. And what is the difference, and what role does it play in the success of an organization?
I think the biggest debate that is happening right now as we speak is brand versus demand. So it's investing in the how findable, understood, and chosen your brand is even before a conversation is ever had with a sales rep, right? That notion of that, or should we lean in and invest money in those campaigns, programs, or tactics that will drive pipeline? And I think that's just the wrong argument to have. I mean, you quite literally, you need both, right? You've
Yeah,
got to be
yeah,
thinking about attracting and engaging and building trust with the right audience before they're willing to talk to a sales rep. And the way you do that is by delivering, helpful, smart and helpful content, value that enables that research and evaluation makes it easier for them to solve their problems.
right, right,
You can't not make that investment and think somehow the demand programs or those lead generating programs to support the sales pipeline is going to work,
right,
right?
right.
Now, I think that's always been the case, but what's fascinating to me, and about a year and a half ago, there were 3 or 4 independent studies that just they're really digging into how companies buy stuff from other companies. And what came through loud and clear in all of this research is that now, for a number of reasons, a lot of that research and evaluation work is done by the people within these companies completely anonymously.
Mm,
And in fact, nearly 90% of the time, that company has actually not only shaped its finalist list, it actually has the number 1 preferred on that finalist before sales rep conversation is ever had.
wow.
And the kicker is that nearly 85% of those purchasing decisions will pick the number 1 on that list. So the odds of you getting on the finalist list are not dependent on a sales rep. It's depending on how findable, understood, and chosen you are.
Yeah,
But the odds of you even dethroning the preferred vendor on that finalist list through the sales, that's also an uphill battle. It's against all
yeah,
odds.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and it's only getting harder because of the way that we're using AI now.
yeah,
Um, so that pressure is just making it easier for all of that anonymous research. Like, we don't have to wade through death by blue links anymore. We can actually
right,
have a conversation, have the agent go out, do all the research, come back, distill it, and chat with it about that information it's found, shape our little lists again without ever having to wade through endless, clicking through links. I don't think it's going to get easier. So you need the brand, in order to win when sales are actually engaged. But if you invest too much in brand, you never actually monetize that engagement.
Yeah.
So in that case, it's never. I mean, if you're going to do this, and you're not going to be smart about how you attempt to really engage in a meaningful way, so that they will have a sales conversation, your pipeline will dry up.
Right.
So
Right.
you can't do both. You can't pick one or the other. You actually have to invest in both.
Right. 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 And it's not a either or, which one's better than the other. They're all absolutely necessary because,
Yeah.
if you don't have uh, branding, you don't have what to market, you don't have what to sell, you don't have the attention like you talked about, you don't get chosen because you're not doing the right things in the right order, in the right balance of activity, right?
Yeah, and I don't want to come across as biased towards marketing because at no point in time in this last couple minutes I didn't say, oh, the sales are the heroes of this scenario. It sounded as though I minimized it, but that's not true. What effectively happens, they do all this research, but they're selling conversations of what's validating and clarifying the research that they've done. It's helping them scope and chart the path forward. So no one is buying anything based solely on something marketing has done. But
Yeah.
I can offer to you that we're now in a phase where no one is buying anything from a sales rep without them doing background research and understanding what our point of views are, how we help people like them, how we solve the problem, what others like them are saying about the brand in communities. And I mean,
Yeah.
it
Yeah.
takes all of us to be able to win. And given just the data and how hard it is to dethrone the preferred vendor, it feels to me like you need to focus and really care about being on that list and being in that pole position before they're willing to talk to sales.
And so, what are some ways to do that? What are some ways to get in that position that you've found that's working? Because,
Yeah,
I do want to address AI and how it's impacted everything. But,
yeah,
as long as Google's existed, we've always used it for background checks to check somebody out.
yeah,
We've wanted to see that who we're choosing is the right choice. And the list hasn't always been reliable. It's always been tedious. It's always pay to play. People rise to the top because they manipulate the algorithms and all that stuff. So what are some things that people can get in place to help them kind of become more uh, visible or more more often chosen?
yeah. I love that you called it out in the sense that look, we've been using the internet now, what, 2 decades, almost 2 decades at this point, to do this background research. Um, I think the fun fact here is it's likely some of the same what you needed to care about even before AI was influencing our research and evaluation. It comes down to three things, or at least I simplify it to three. It's content, it's community, and credibility. We had to care about that even when it was just a traditional SEO game, right?
Right, right,
But what's fascinating about those three things, so in the context of content, what questions are being asked, what questions need to be answered, who's asking those questions, where are they asking them, and of course, in what format is their preferred format to get the answer in. And if you put that lens on that first piece, you realize that there's humans that you've always had to care about, but now we have AI agents or large language models that we also need to make sure that we know how they ask the questions, how they want it formatted. Like, you now need to care about all those things for both humans and machine,
right,
more
right.
so than a search engine, a traditional search engine would have cared about. Community. I don't know a marketer that ever thought that we were going to see a resurgence around Quora, but here we are. We've got Quora, we've got Reddit, we've got a number of online communities in school and Slack. Now, as marketers, we do need to care about making sure that our brand or our solutions are talked about in those communities, but do so in a way that, again, and this is going to hit on the third one, which is credibility, that it feels helpful, that it feels
Yeah.
valuable, that it feels credible, that it doesn't feel like a sales pitch.
Right.
And there are various strategies to do that, but do it in an ethical way. And then that final piece, credibility, back to that brand demand debate we were just talking about.
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
the longest time, demand was winning that debate because it was growth at all costs, and people thought that maybe through the demand efforts, through those campaigns, that must be building the brand, right? That must be strengthening the brand. Well, some of the things we underfunded or underinvested in were traditional PR,
Yeah. Wow.
thought leadership, right?
Yeah.
And those industry leading, very large global enterprises that kind of spun too far over, these AI native startups whose founders are building in public and putting out smart and helpful content, like quite literally giving all these insights away for free, very similar to a podcast, right?
Yeah.
Podcast,
Yeah.
video, live video feeds, stuff like that. They're stealing share of attention and share of market from these industry leading trusted brands that no one would have ever questioned buying from a startup.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
if
Wow.
I listen to this podcast for 6 hours on a Saturday while I'm folding endless laundry, by the time I talk to you next week, I'll buy anything you tell me
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
trust you and I know you know what I'm going through. So
Wow.
back to that content, community, credibility. There isn't a magic bullet. I don't think there ever was. But there sure as heck isn't one now.
Wow. Wow. Now, we talked about marketing teams and some of the outdated models. What are some of the outdated operating models that you still continue to see? Even, we're kind of 3 years into AI. And so what are some of those outdated models, operating models that people are still using that you see?
It's a headcount-first model. So anytime there's let's say a executive team makes a decision that they want to bring a new capability to market or enter a new market. I can think of a number of business strategies they want to execute on. The marketing leader in that equation tends to think, well, that's a new capability or that's more capacity I need, and they lead immediately with, I need more headcount. And
Mm.
they just think year over year, the way CMOs historically show up, particularly around budgeting time, where you've just turned the business strategy into an annual operating plan, they then immediately want headcount and increased budget. I
What do you
think
mean by headcount? What do you mean by headcount?
more people for their team. I want to add
Okay.
more people on my team. I need 3 more designers. I need another email marketing specialist. They just naturally default to, I need more to do the new things.
Right.
That is getting challenged in a couple of ways. For more than a decade, companies were definitely in a mode of growth at all costs. And so if they wanted to scale revenue, it was naturally assumed you'd scale the money you'd spend on marketing and sales, right? It was just, okay, I want more revenue. I need to invest in more people, more programs, more campaigns, more technology. We're no longer in that grow at all costs. It's got to be sustainable growth. And it
Yeah.
also needs to be very flexible because candidly, after the pandemic and lots of things happen, you can't get yourself locked up in fixed costs. You've got to be able to be agile and flexible.
Yeah.
So it's getting challenged from that perspective. And with that, the other piece that is challenging, the marketing leader rarely has the hard conversation around, well, what are the things I should stop doing?
Right.
Well,
Right.
if it does, maybe I'm a very strong financial steward for the company, and I'm not immediately going to knee jerk and say I want more people to add to my team, more personnel budget. They also tend to shy away from the hard conversation around, we're going to be entering a new market, which adds 3 other languages to the amount of languages I need to support for my content and in these campaigns and these events. What should I stop doing?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
and furthermore, what's super fascinating is that usually the marketing team, again, back to the order taking function of the C-suite, they also really tend to shy away from pushing back against requests that come in from the other functional groups that would not have an impact on those business strategies. So that headcount or more funding, more resources, I think, is being pushed on for that, especially at a time where non-marketers think that marketing can just use AI. They don't need people anymore.
Right, right.
It's not true. But Sam Altman didn't help us with a statement of, 95% of marketing, once we achieve AGI, will just be done by the AI. That's
Right,
not
right.
helping in the boardroom. So, that's probably where I would start.
So why is it not helping? What do you see as being the problem with that kind of a statement?
Well, what it does, that personnel, that more people, the more resources thing, what's it doing is it's locking up more of their budget in resources to do the work. And we did some market research about a year ago, and there are multiple other benchmarks where they leave themselves very few dollars out of their total budget. Less than 25% of their dollars are allocated to the programs that actually would fuel the pipeline. So they'll take away from paid digital, they'll take away from events, they'll take away from syndicated content and sponsorships and community engagement to just add more people to do the work. They're choosing between funding growth and funding capabilities. And I
Wow.
think the first mindset shift needs to be stop that trade off. I think of
Yeah,
different ways, and there are lots of ways to be able to get the work done today. You don't need to own all of it in house, and it doesn't all need to be done by a human.
right,
And
right.
the humans should be thinking and focusing on the higher value, higher impact work, and then leveraging a variety of models that could help them get the work done so that you
Right.
can still have enough money to put into your programs to make sure that your content is findable.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Um,
So what
yeah.
do you think of Sam Altman's quote, though? Do you feel he's accurate? Do you feel he's way off? Is it just a AI person having big thoughts, big ideas, but in reality, it's not really true?
I think the quote itself was taken out of context. If you look at, if you go back to when he said it, I think what he was, it's recently come out that he was really just talking about the tactical execution work will and should be done using in some form of AI to do that work. Um, he's not saying you need 95% fewer humans.
Okay.
He's
Yeah.
suggesting that the tactical, repeatable tasks that we are bogged down by, that'll be taken away, and it should be.
Yeah.
For example, if your source of joy in the world is to click the button the 21 times to get an email set up in the platform out the door, you might be in trouble in this next phase.
Yeah.
If your source of enjoyment is thinking, how can I reach and really genuinely engage my customer base? I'm going to use email, but I'm going to use it with these messages, with this offer. You will do just fine in this next phase. You'll be free of the 21 steps to get the email out the door without any errors, without any mistakes.
Right. Right. So you've talked about AI and outsourcing a little bit already. Talk a little bit about that when it comes to the new operating structure. When you're talking about what the new modern CMO looks like,
Yeah,
talk to me about AI and the outsourcing and what that looks like.
sure. This one framework that I've been using for many years, and certainly has become very relevant today, is to think about what you should really own and keep in house and is uniquely human. What should be outsourced, and marketers have been using forms of outsourcing for many years. I'm not here to surprise anyone. We've had
Right.
agencies used for lots of work, and what should be automated within the outsource. Marketing leaders have tended to think kind of in a very binary. I either want to hire some people and put them on my in-house team, or I want to outsource it. And within the outsourcing, it's usually the agency model, which is very project or tightly defined scope. They've not been educated on a variety of outsourcing models, which could include things like managed services model, where you subscribe to a capability It doesn't lock you into things like contracts. It's not scope based. And if you have to pivot from one market to another or bring one capability to another, you're not locked in to these
Yeah.
fixed
Yeah.
contracts. Whereas IT, finance, and HR for the last 2 decades, they've mastered, managed services, freelancer as a service platforms. They have found ways, aside from specialist agencies, to be able to scale their function without scaling either headcount or personnel costs, or without adding a lot of operational burden. And so imagine the burden that comes for the team that might have to manage a large network of freelancers or agencies managing different projects. And so that's kind of the one piece. So own, outsource, and automate. And the way I tend to kind of classify the work is if it's your secret sauce, your messaging, your positioning, how, where do you play, how do you win, your offer strategy, the campaign, the overarching campaign strategies in terms of how you'll attract new audiences, engage, and then monetize them. That should all likely be in-house and human. They might use AI from as a thought partner from a brainstorming standpoint, but that secret sauce you should own and keep in-house. Often what's fascinating in that situation is when there's a major market pivot and the marketer has to figure out how to seize the opportunity of that pivot. If they don't have the in-house capacity or skill set, it's that work that they give to a specialist agency. They'll actually bring
Yeah.
on a brand agency, or let's say a product launch agency, to make those smart decisions based on your strategy, whereas the in-house team is still bogged down by the day-to-day executional repeatable task work that they might call soul sucking. They don't get to do the fun work because some agency got this because of the turn time in order to deliver on that piece. So own in-house, keep your in-house resources free enough where they can really focus on the higher value impact work. Think about anything from an execution perspective, where you could actually document standard operating procedures. Where does it need to be done uniquely from your competitors? For example, I use the email example. Do you really need to set up and deploy emails in a different way than your competitor does? Probably not, right? You can
Yeah.
use best practices around subject line and calls to action, all of those pieces. That's a repeatable workflow that you could outsource to a variety of different partners. The bonus is if you take that work and you outsource it to an AI forward provider that's already figured out how to use AI to accelerate the workflow or against those series of tasks, that kind of can be your leapfrog, if you will. And then anything that is repeatable and you could hire an intern and transfer over that work where there's a series of tasks and steps and give it access to context about your company, your message, your brand, your offering. And it doesn't require, a lot of iteration.
Yeah.
Out of the box, that's an AI thing. Now, whether or not you keep the orchestrators of AI internally and have them manage that work internally, or you outsource that repeatable work that AI could do, that an intern could do. You could use an outsource partner for that too. But own, outsource, automate. And then within that, just think about how each one of those layers should be using AI in a responsible way.
Now, people have gone, some people have gone, all in on AI,
Yeah.
and maybe they've done things that they shouldn't, because, usually when new technology comes out, you kind of some people go all in, and maybe they sometimes go too far. They kind of, go too far to one side, and then they've kind of got to spring back to a more sustainable model. Where are you seeing people making mistakes in implementing AI that you think that they need to kind of come back to a more reasonable place?
Well, I think there's probably two areas that I'll highlight here. I'll go with the easy one first. Whoever the recipient is of that interaction, experience, asset, whatever that might be, I've not seen a whole lot of marketers talk about the recipient's expectation for that. So, for example, Um, would we expect that AI could write the copy of an email we receive in our inbox? Absolutely. Don't care if there's an M dash. I don't care if I see too many fundamentals, right? Would we expect to see AI's influence in a LinkedIn post? Yeah, maybe. Would we want AI to automate the commenting? No. Like that what's the point at this point? Like if you're going
Yeah.
to comment, it should be the human that engages. Recently I just recorded because I am trying to demonstrate how far the technology can be taken. Um, the book and the concepts in the book, all mine. But I used AI to interview me to make sure that as I was fleshing out each chapter, I didn't leave any critical thoughts out. And I wasn't repeating myself, right? I could be long winded. So I'm like, all right, help me distill my thoughts. I don't know many people that would push back against the use of AI in that way, right?
Yeah.
Interview me. This is what I'm trying to make sure the takeaways are for this chapter. That is uniquely mine. Experiences, lessons learned, those things, not outsourcing it to an AI model. In other cases, I've seen people leverage things like AI avatars. Maybe as a chat support on a website, totally fine with that. Awesome. I'll get the answers to my questions faster. I'll get to where I need to go faster. Do I want the thought leadership from the CEO as an avatar show up in an earnings call? No, actually, don't phone it in. So I think
Right.
if you
Right.
start with that, like the recipient or the audience, would they expect and or want AI to be the heavy influence there? To what degree would they want it to be uniquely human? The other layer is there's a lot of AI theater, AI everywhere, impact nowhere. And it's usually because they've applied AI to what looks like a sexy use case. I just gave a couple of examples, right? Super
Yeah.
cool to have an AI avatar that speaks 17 languages, even though you only speak English. But is it actually going to have an impact? Is it going to provide value to the audience, or is it going to drive pipeline? And the kicker is those things tend to be very complex. They could be a 40 stage N8N workflow with integrations here and there trying to get it, but it drives no impact.
Yeah. Wow.
And so, what would the audience expect? And then on the effort versus impact quadrant, if you would think high impact, low impact, high effort, low effort, focus on the high impact, low effort use cases, and that'll move the needle in a meaningful way.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so good. And I think, when it comes to new technologies, I remember I'm old enough to remember when the internet came out, and I remember that,
That's an option. Should I have one? Like,
well, and the
yes.
thing is, there were some really, really great ideas that came out. I mean, a lot of the stuff that we're even seeing now, well, the ideas were there when the internet first happened, but the audience was not there. I remember, there was talk about, subscription models. There was talk about grocery shopping online. There was talk about getting stuff for your pets, online, and there was all these things, but the audience was just not ready for it. The people were not ready for it, and I see that also happening with AI. Is people are so excited about AI that they're implementing it in these relationships with customers. And it's like, people aren't quite ready for that level of automation and AI working for them, that they still want the human element in some areas. And that sounds like that's what you're talking about as well, right?
I do, and it's 100% what I'm talking about. And again, I try to be very AI. I certainly am AI first in the sense that when I'm going to do something, I will ask the question, to what extent AI could do this for me? And the next question is, to what extent will the recipient want AI to do it that far? Right. So I
Right, right,
kind of
right.
go through those. That's 100% what we're seeing. What I think will be interesting to watch over the next 18 to 24 months are those companies whose brands become differentiated because they lean in against AI. And they decide to be truly uniquely human in every way. I don't know to what degree that they would push that before they would lose those things that could be competitive advantages, but I do think that might be one soon.
Yeah. I totally agree with that. I think that would actually become a positioning, a differentiation for a lot of businesses saying, hey, when you call us, you're going to talk to a real person.
Right.
When you email us, somebody's going to email you back. That's a real person. And, I think that definitely would become a way that some people are going to try and differentiate themselves, is bring them the humanity back, and saying it's not, you're not going to get pushed into a funnel of AI and never get to talk to a real person again.
Yeah. We talk about this notion of brand gravity, and brand gravity is, thinking about how strong your brand is that kind of attracts your buyers. And to do that today with the surface area we have to cover, I just talked with you about different communities, traditional search, that the different large language models are using different sources to cite and mention and refer you. All of the standard channels we had to worry about, it's too far to it just there's so much work there. We will never have enough resources to be able to now meet the buyer in all of, like, across all of these watering holes. And there are going to be, you can use AI to build your digital mass that strengthens your gravity, but just be very mindful of the content you produce, how you use AI, so that it does feel credible, that it does actually feel like it'll strengthen your brand versus damage it. But can you imagine taking one question and having to turn it into, 20 questions because of all the ways that somebody might talk to an AI model, and then having to produce all of those assets in a variety of formats for both a human and an AI model to understand? We'll never have the resources we need to do that. So we will need to use AI to kind of meet that expectation. But should the thought itself, the recommendations that might be featured in that content, that should be uniquely human.
Right, right. So when it comes to being a limitless CMO, when it comes to your book and what you've written in there, what are some of the other concepts that you discuss in there that would help a business understand, you know, the role of AI, the role of pivoting in this very interesting time that we're in?
The three core levers of the book are, and I really debated whether or not they should be three separate books, but it occurred to me that you actually need to pull all three levers to become limitless. The first one is, think about marketing or run marketing very much like a business. If you are an entrepreneur, maybe your marketing function might be some of your hours. And so maybe you're not thinking about the marketing the same way an enterprise CMO would that has 1,000 marketers around the world, but run it like a business. Maybe even think about it like an ATM. If you are putting money into marketing, if you are doing it effectively, you should be able to get more money out of it. To do
Right.
that, though, you're going to have to be very intentional with where you place your investments. No, not unlike an investment portfolio. You're going to have those bets that you place that are the long-term bets, and then there are going to be those that are short-term that kind of support and spin off money today. Um, the reason I use the acronym ATM is because it stands for audience growth, trust and engagement, and monetization. And so your investment
I
portfolio
like that.
should
Yeah.
have some long-term bets
Yeah.
around brand, to attract, your new audiences. You should be making some investments to continuously build trust and engagement with the audience that's already captive to you. And then, of course, make some investments to monetize that level of engagement. That's one. The second we've already talked about is, how do you think strategically about outsourcing? You do not need to do all this work yourself. If you're an entrepreneur, the way you might think about that is every hour of your time is worth something. And so think about those things that are should be uniquely human. That's your source of secret sauce. Those are the things you should be using your time on. The things that are not those, outsource it to others who have an expertise in that.
Yeah.
Free up your time and focus it. That's the same even if you are the CMO of an organization that's been an industry leader for 40 years and you have 1,000 marketers. You should be thinking the same way. And then the final is when you think about AI, use it as a force multiplier. I had kind of implied earlier in terms of if you have your strategic in-house core team, your in-house people, that could be you, could be your in-house people. They should be thinking about AI as a thought partner. They should be thinking about AI as an always-on strategist in their pocket that could either help amplify what they do really well and do it faster, or we all have some areas of weakness. I may not be the best product marketer in the world, but man, I'm great with demand gen. I can use AI to help address the gap I might have from a product marketing standpoint so that I can be impactful for the business. But that's my thought leader. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, whenever inspiration hits me, I should use it that way. Recognizing it can be used more ways than just do the thing.
Yeah.
Right. Anyway, so AI is a force multiplier, thinking strategically about outsourcing so that you free yourself up for high impact work and run marketing like a business.
Yeah. So when it comes to outsourcing, do you have any kind of a formula that you use to help the person, whether it's the entrepreneur, the starting up a business, or whether it's somebody that's running, like you mentioned, an organization with hundreds or thousands of marketers?
Yeah.
How do you determine what is the best to outsource? And you mentioned what your value is per hour. Are there any other things that you kind of talk about or that you look at when it comes to recommending that?
Yeah, I do think that there are different forms of outsourcing based on what you're trying to accomplish. And so being clear about what body of work you want to outsource. I think I gave an example earlier around that felt like this is more strategic work, it's point in time, it's defined and scoped, could very much be around refreshing your brand strategy as an example. You need a specialist expertise for that. I would strongly suggest thinking about a specialist agency that can manage that project work. If it's that, we talked about the execution work, right? When you think about all of the ways that we bring messaging and offers to life, uh, marketing is actually a specialist function in the sense that because of the number of channels that we need to be found in and understood in, email, social media, display ads, right? Traditional search, an AI model, I can keep going. There's
Right.
every one of those, even LinkedIn in and of itself has its own best practices, and that's
Yeah.
wildly different than the best practices for YouTube. That's wildly
Right.
different than it might be for Spotify and podcasts, right? That's all specialist work, but it doesn't need to be uniquely your secret sauce. So when you outsource, you can outsource that execution work, but do so in a way, and this is managed services is a great example of this. Do so in a way that gives you some form of competitive advantage or leverage. That can come in a number of different ways. It could be that they have documented best practices on email marketing best practices, as an example, LinkedIn best practices. Also, it could be that they could be scale up, scale down as your needs evolve through the year. So, most marketers at this point wrestle with a heavy concentration of events in certain quarters, in certain months. But they try to staff up in such a way for that highest peak period, but then they have excess capacity and or locked costs for the rest of the year. If you're thinking strategically about outsourcing, you're looking at a potential managed services provider. You could subscribe to the talent, peak it up, but then scale it back down so that your dollars aren't locked up there and you can use it in
Right.
other ways. That's a model that's very different than a discretely scoped project. For example, I was a CMO of a company and we had spent, I don't know, nearly like 4 months developing this end-to-end campaign to bring this new capability to market. And I'll never forget this moment. We were just about to launch it, and Tom Bravo went out and acquired our top 2 competitors, and announced that they were going to integrate it. And the integration of those two dramatically changed how we needed to position this capability in the market. that agency didn't say, "Oh, you can have your money back." Like, I quite literally, and no, they were paid to finish the work, and like that's the body of work. Rather than if you're in a managed services type form, or let's say a subscription services, before that work is finished, you could say, "All right, we're going to stop this work and we're going to pivot in this way."
Right.
Like that could become a competitive advantage, the ability to scale up and down, but also pivot.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah.
I kind of think about it in that way. And then finally, I do think that that which can be outsourced will be documented. You'll get your workflows taskified. You kind of have to figure out who's who in the zoo and how the work gets done. That
Right.
natural effort for a large global enterprise, believe it or not, is a very cumbersome, hard thing to do. That naturally sets the stage for thinking about how AI should be applied to accelerate those workflows to improve the
Yeah.
quality of output. So make sure you pick, a partner that through that process does actually help you get your house in order and
Yeah.
is already AI forward and thinking, do we really need to take 97 days to get a full campaign out to market? We could probably do this in 2 weeks if we can compress these review cycles. So,
Right. Right.
anyways, that's how I tend to think. The book has, ways to evaluate partners, how to manage multiple partners in an ecosystem, because there rarely is one that solves for all things, and do so in a way to kind of reduce your operational burden.
Yeah. Something
Yeah.
that you said there is very interesting that I want to make sure that people hear as well is when it comes to marketing in different channels, you mentioned LinkedIn, YouTube, things like that, Facebook, that there are very particular skill sets needed to effectively market in those channels. And a lot of people think that, I've got my logo guy and he's going to help me do my marketing. And it's like, well, the logo guy might not be qualified to do the marketing that you need done. Or even the marketing agency, they might be generally good, but they're not specifically good for certain channels. And so finding those specialists that are really, really good at a particular channel and understanding which ones to choose, I think is a valuable and a very important part of growing as a business, is understanding that there are some people that just eat, drink, live, sleep LinkedIn marketing, and it's very different to the person who does the same for Facebook. And you
Yeah,
can't cross over with the exact same strategies.
they're not. And I think therein lies the challenge with marketing that I think is unique from the other functional groups, is it really the sheer number of channels and the wildly
Yeah.
different personas we're trying to sell to and their preferences in those channels. And they're just so complex. The rise of the marketing technologist was true more than a decade ago. I mean, just think through, as people started adopting websites and then smartphones and social media and community channels, all of these things, there is a natural tech-enabled component to it. There's a complexity to every one of those channels, and
Right.
each one of them has their own algorithm that shifts to try to keep those people on those platforms so that they don't go from LinkedIn to Facebook to X.
Right. Right.
That it it's amazing how fast the marketing function can get bloated with specialists everywhere, because the marketing leaders know, we're all consumers. I know what good looks like on LinkedIn when I'm scrolling and what keeps me on the platform. And I know the stuff that I would expect there is not at all the same that I would expect on X or that I would expect in, let's say, Reddit, right? These are
Right.
very,
Right.
very different things. LinkedIn now has, they're testing and YouTube Shorts, or not YouTube Shorts. They have their own view of Shorts that I think algorithmically is not the same as TikTok, is not the same as a YouTube Short. And having someone know the nuances of that is what gets you found, understood, and chosen.
Right.
But you
Right.
can't afford to have people for everything. I can't afford to just have one person doing Reddit all day or one person doing LinkedIn all day. I think that's how we ended up with these bloated organizations to begin with, which is why we sometimes don't have the credibility we need in the C-suite, because we have so many specialists and people don't understand why we need 4 social media people. Well, because those 4 channels that matter to us They have very, very different requirements. So
Right.
use outsource for that, because the way you show up in LinkedIn, what will differentiate you is what you're actually saying. But the best
Right.
practice is to make sure that the algorithm serves up and makes sure more people sees your point of view. That can be done by LinkedIn specialists.
Right. Well, and I like what you said there is the channels that matter to us. I think, not everybody needs to be on every single channel. You
No.
need to find the channels that actually, that's where your audience is. That's where your ideal customer is, and
Yeah.
not feel that you've got to be everywhere. If your audience is not on Facebook, then don't invest a lot of time in hiring a specialist for Facebook, because that is a lot of wasted time. You might just need to focus on some of the other areas that you had mentioned. And I think that's where some people make a mistake. They think they've got to be omnipresent everywhere, but that's just bad strategy because they're not understanding where their audience is, right?
Yeah, I can offer to you that after Twitter was rebranded to X and there was a massive layoff, so basically all the marketers, you weren't going to find a marketer on X. No
Yeah,
reason to even think about putting something on an X. Quite literally on LinkedIn, they were talking about how they were all closing their X accounts. So guess where I needed to be? I needed to be on LinkedIn
right,
for that
right.
audience. Understanding that, I think that's the unlock.
Yeah. Well, it's already almost been an hour. This has been amazing. I like to usually end by asking, what's a question that you wish I'd asked you, or a head smack that you'd like to share?
Hmm. Question head smack like, oh, what is the well, look, I think there are a lot of things, but what does the marketing org in the future look like?
So, what does it look like?
I think it's a very small in-house team. That small in-house team are strategists with superpowers. And I think that they become orchestrators. They become the orchestrators of the business of marketing. And what they are orchestrating is a combination of human partners and AI agents. But it's not there aren't many layers in the org. There's a very thin layer. It's a very flat org, small in-house team. They operate very much like a SWAT team, so to speak. They are assigned to a business outcome, and they orchestrate their way to those outcomes.
Wow. Now, with an organization like that, how do you, like, with a lot of organizations, you kind of work your way up to where you get to that position of being the orchestrator, the
Yeah.
overseer. You kind of do pay your dues. As you work up, you get the insights and the intuition and the training and the knowledge. So if organizations of the future just have this higher level, how do people get up to that higher level if there is no middle, and even if the low end is not there, how does that happen in the future? How do you see it happening?
I think that is the $1 million question right now, right? Is that, look, thinking about the entry level roles, and candidly, I think um, there's a number of ways to make this happen. But if you are just entering college, or you're coming out of college, or let's just say you're ready to enter the workforce, what are you doing to understand how to leverage AI, both from a self education, right? Scenario planning. You can actually be using AI to get that stuff that you might have had to depend on a brand or an employer from a real world experience standpoint. But I think the unlock here is that if I were to focus on a soft skill, if you're strong at communicating and managing or delegating to someone else, if that has always been a strength of yours, is empowering someone else to execute against a task or a series of tasks, in the age of AI, that is going to become your superpower. Your ability to
Yeah. Wow.
communicate what it is that needs to get done. And then if you have such limited experience, and this is just my advice to people, ask AI for advice on how that work has historically been done by others. And what are the ways I can and should be using you to get that
Yeah.
work done now? But I think the piece that lies in there is understanding, can you empower someone else to do a body of work and that soft skill, and get very clear at communication. Use it personally. When I think about some of like, I'm in the process of buying a new car. My ability to articulate what it is that I really genuinely want in a new car to ChatGPT, and then having it ask me a series of questions so I can really get clear on what matters to me and what doesn't. That's an example of what you will need to succeed in the business environment in the future.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
if you can do that, um, I think you'll do just fine. And we might see that this next phase of growth is really entrepreneurs that are focused on using AI to solve a real business problem, and they don't need to go work for someone else. I
Right.
don't know.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah. It is. It is an interesting time that we're living in, and it's hard to believe that it's only been a couple of years.
Yeah.
That we've had AI available to us to use, and so I think there's going to be there's going to be some failures, there's going to be some successes, there's going to be some learning, there's going to be some pivoting, there's going to be some readjustment, but we're still in the early stages. AI is still a baby, and we're still trying to figure this out of how this baby has changed our lives. And I think there's going to be a lot of interesting time ahead when it comes to AI.
I feel like I sit, because I focus on this, or really I care deeply about marketing and helping marketers kind of navigate this next phase. Um, I get exposed to fairly advanced use cases, but what I fail to recognize is that everyone around me still really early in their understanding of AI and their adoption of AI. So
Right,
even
right.
even that last piece of advice of, have you actually just opened up whatever chat bot is your preference, ChatGPT or Perplexity, whatever one you want, and just simply said, this is what I'm trying to do. How can I use you for this? Just ask
Yeah,
that one question. That in and of itself is probably just a lightning bolt for everyone around me. They're not trying to engineer or reimagine how an end-to-end campaign goes from an idea out to market in 10 different channels. They're
right,
quite literally saying, how can I use this in such a way that helps me with the thing that I'm wrestling with at this moment?
right, right. Yeah,
So
I remember that.
it's going to take a couple years. Human friction is going to be the thing that slows this train down, even if AI is more capable.
Yeah, yeah. I remember the first time I used AI. It was just you asked it a question and suddenly it pops something back and you read it and you're like, it's that like you said, that lightning bolt moment. It's like, wow, that came from a non-human, and it's pretty good what it told me. And I think just like you said, just adopting it and trying it out, and then starting to look at and talk to people that are experienced with it, into integrating it into your business in ways that is actually practical and usable and makes sense. And then you can elevate that. And as you talked about, the automations and N8N and all these connections and all these, you
Yeah.
don't feel that you have to do that from the very first thing. Just talk to it. Just
Yeah.
give it a shot, and you'll see how you can start implementing it into your business.
100%. Everyone's having this Claude Code moment
Yeah,
where they're going out and assembling, like, gathering hundreds of skills, and yet they use it and the output's not that great. Like, well, have you just asked it for advice on how to solve this challenge you're dealing with?
yeah,
And if you
yeah,
are using a skill, do you know why you're using it? Aside from the fact that it sounds really cool. Like, do you know what good enough looks like so that you can have it improve the skill after you use it once? Do you know that even if you use a skill, if it get poor output, you can ask it to edit its own instructions based on what it's learned from the feedback you've given it? Those are the things that would be the real unlocks, not trying to stitch together 17 skills across a workflow, right?
right,
It
right.
sounds great. It looks awesome. It's crazy sexy, but no, doesn't
Yeah,
need to be complex.
yeah. I love that. I love that, Lisa. This has been amazing. So, if people want to find out more about you, if they want to get your book, what's the best way to get a hold of you?
Personally, there are two ways to get a hold of me. On LinkedIn, Lisa Cole 01. And my personal website is LisaCole.ai. If you are a go-to-market leader and you are struggling with how to scale your impact, wrestling with limited resources, all the things we've talked about, you can find me at 2x.com.
Awesome. And I'll have those links in the show notes as well. And of course, your book, can I get the book on Amazon? Can I get it?
It is
all right.
all online retailers. And also there's a link, a universal link on my website, LisaCole.ai, to find it as well.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Lisa. This has been wonderful. A lot of great insights, a lot of stuff that I think are good head smacks for people to think about when it comes to what they're doing at whatever place you are in your business, whether you're just starting up entrepreneur to whether you're running a large corporation. I think you've shared a lot of great insights, and I appreciate you coming on.
Thank you very much for the time and the I really enjoyed the conversation. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
You too.
You are listening to Conversations with Misfits, Mavericks, and Trailblazers.